Hello, Kola Yuha Ichichab. This is Chase Iron Eyes, and I want to welcome you to episode number 9, season 1 of Native American Patriot Talk on AM 950, powered by Native Roots Radio. I'm traveling, not very far from home, but I'm traveling, and I'm just off the heels of, in our culture, what we call the Vision Quest ceremony, or Humblechea. And Humblechea means to cry out for a vision. And so a lot of world cultures, probably all world cultures, traditionally or historically, had and or have fasting ceremonies. And we conduct ours every year, every year that we're blessed to have a changing of seasons. That is, from the time that the Thunder Beings return to our homelands here in the Northern Plains, centered in and around the Black Hills, the Black Hills National Forest, it is now called. But these lands, like with all Native people, wherever you're at, even if it's just a simple land acknowledgement, wherever you're at is native land. No doubt about it. The entire hemisphere, the entire continent, everything that now has, Westphalian nation state borders and so forth. It's all our land. It's all native land. And all of the world religions, the world cultures, the world knowledge systems um, are behooved by recognizing that world views or world religions or ways of knowing um, are empowered by acclimating and incorporating and creating the unitive expression, the unitive way of life with the supernatural elements or the natural elements, however you want to view those things. And that's what fasting is about. I mean, you go a couple days without food and water, and you're no longer going down rabbit holes thinking that life is a simulation. It becomes very clear, and you respect immediately your own frailty, your own humility, and your own mortality. And life means something much more powerful to a person, to a petitioner. And so I wanted to, just explain a little bit about where I've been. That doesn't mean I wasn't able to keep up with the news of the day, which we'll cover some of that today. If you listen to all, and thank you all so much, those of you who are tracking, every time I meet somebody, every time I come into contact with somebody and they find out that I have a podcast, and this is a broadcast. This is being put out to AM 950 listeners, headquartered in Minneapolis area, Minneapolis, St. Paul area, Eden Prairie. But all of our listeners, the progressive voice of Minnesota, that's where it's published first, and then it gets out into the blogosphere and the webcasting sphere. We've seen an explosion in podcasts. Everybody and their dog has a podcast now, and you can count me among them. But we also publish at AM 950, which I'm very honored and grateful for. But that's where I've been, and I really would like to encourage people in their own journeys, our listeners, in their own way of life, in their own walk of life, no matter what spiritual discipline that you might ascribe to or that you might pull from for inspiration, for principles, for values, for virtues, for morale, whatever you are using to navigate the human condition, to navigate corporal reality, what we are all trying to get through outside of all of the noise, right? There's the noise of politics and law and media and algorithm and everything that feeds your interpretive senses, your neurons, and every experience that you are cultivating with artificial intelligence. There's that struggle, and that's why returning to ceremony is extremely important, because it's a way for a human soul to learn, to begin the path of salvation and redemption and awareness, consciousness. So I'm fresh off the heels of that ceremony. That's why I kind of wanted to spend a little time focusing in on that and encouraging that pathway. Maybe it's wherever you're at. Maybe you already have maybe it's a meditative practice. Maybe it's saunas and ice plunges. Maybe it's a sweat lodge. Maybe it's mantras, chanting. Maybe you have a drum practice. Maybe you smudge. Whatever it is, fasting is also another a clear path to seeking spiritual liberation. But um that'll I'm contemplating a whole nother podcast. We're gonna do 10 episodes here, and but maybe we'll talk more about that later, about the nature and the contours of a spiritually focused podcast. And thank you for indulging that. I don't mean to come off any kind of way, because I know a lot of us are traumatized by the dogmatic approach of organized hierarchical recognized religions, whatever that is for people. But it's important to be cognizant of the nature of our own divinity, our in navigating spiritual reality. But I'll start with the New York Knicks and the San Antonio Spurs. If any of you are paying attention, and in Indian country, in the Native American world, we're certainly paying attention, because there's a brother named Lindy Waters who plays for the San Antonio Spurs, and he's a native person. I believe he hails from Oklahoma, and he is on the squad. He's on the NBA final squad with the San Antonio Spurs. But what I wanted to point out is that New York, who hasn't been, the New York Knicks, they have not been to the NBA finals in a generation. They have not won the NBA championship in even longer. And so the entire city of New York, the boroughs, this is where Mamdani is the mayor, right? And it's a place where Donald Trump, President Trump, he probably feels at home there. He was located there for a long time. And Trump is delusional. Trump is not all there. I mean, I'm almost at a saturation point with the level of tomfoolery and just absolute absurdity, the insanity of watching an American president, our president, somebody whose team represents our country and our families nationally, and more importantly, or just as importantly, in the world stage. And Trump, he is invited by the owners of the Knicks, some billionaire, I don't remember his name, but he agrees to come to Game 3 of the NBA championship, of the NBA Finals, and this ticks off all of New York, because New York the density is already at capacity, and so everybody is looking forward to going to the Knicks championship series. But now they're looking forward to a free block party, like a watch party that Mayor Mamdani and the city was going to put on right in front of Madison Square Garden, right in front of the venue where they were going to play, or where they are playing. And then Trump announces that he's going to visit. This is a massive inconvenience to the logistical flow of the NBA Finals. And Trump, so Mamdani has to move the parties. He has to move the public parties and allow for Trump's security apparatus. Because anytime any one of our presidents or protected officials go anywhere, it becomes this huge security, safety, logistical hurdle. And Trump likes to make these appearances, but you notice there's a shift. Trump is deliberately, I believe his team or it's he himself is advising and making these appearances because they remember when Trump first started out 10 years ago. I mean, he started out long before that, when he was the champion of the birther movement, where they were questioning Barack Obama's U.S. nationality, his citizenship. But um, President Trump in the beginning was seen as a maverick and seen like an outside, a force that wasn't primarily Republican, wasn't primarily Democrat. Trump used to be a Democrat, and he would have these rallies, right? And we've talked about these rallies. We've talked about them in the constant context of a concept known as kayfabe, where they use psychologically manipulative tactics to blur the lines between reality and creating sort of a spectator sport, a way for human beings to kind of extract themselves from the reality, from the political reality, the harsh reality of what's happening, of stagnant wages, of soaring gas prices, no medical, can't afford medical care or dental or vision, can't afford to get into homes because all of the multinational conglomerates like State Street and Vanguard and BlackRock are buying up all of the residential homes everywhere. There's the stark reality of not being able to afford your student loans. I mean, I'm carrying massive student loan debt, just like every other American person who's trying to claw their way out of the trench, of the struggle, of the struggle of being a proud, capable member of the working class, right? What the elites and the politicians try to pretend they are, right? They show up and they try to look like us. They try to talk like us, and they try to slip through the cracks, like Hillary Clinton with hot sauce in her handbag, hot sauce in my bag swag. Trump with the DoorDash grandma showing up to the White House, and it's all a ploy. And I think Americans are finally hip to it. We're tired of it. We see it, and it doesn't make any sense to us. It doesn't make any sense why in the beginning we wrote Trump off, right? We at every stage we said to ourselves internally that this is not a serious candidate, and at some point, the civil decorum and the tradition of respectability among the forced binary of red and blue in this country would weed this radical out of any serious contention for actually achieving the highest political office in the land. And we were sorely mistaken. But I mention all that because you do see a shift. Trump is no longer revered, not even within his own MAGA party, his own MAGA movement. And he didn't start that. You have to go back to, I mean, you could probably go back to the starting of the Heritage Foundation. Or, I mean, I don't know. I have no proof that it's linked to the KKK, but the radical racist fringe in the country certainly is a precursor, and Trump is just an expression. He's saying the quiet parts that they think internally in their own homes, the things that they're teaching their children. Trump is saying that part out loud. Like, You know, when he used to have rallies, they don't have them anymore. They know better. That nobody shows up to them anymore. It doesn't make any sense for even MAGA or Republicans to fawn at a Trump presidency because they see Trump taking American people into the dumpster fire that is his delirium, his pathology. Whether it's narcissist or whether it's delusions of grandeur, whatever, however you want to deconstruct the absurdity of the dangerous absurdity of our highest elected official and the way that he conducts his life and how nobody around him is seemingly willing to check him and to tell him the truth. And so he just keeps going. He just keeps thinking that, you know, from headline to headline, from train wreck newsworthy event, quote unquote, he thinks he can just ride this wave and he's gonna emerge on top. But I'm happy to report that New York wasn't having it. And he showed up, and when they're playing the national anthem and they're showing footage of the players, you know, observing the ritual that is the national anthem, the camera pans to Trump and the entire stadium erupts in boos and jeers and harsh critical energy directed at our president. The entire stadium is going bananas. And the camera also pans to Trump's granddaughter. And Trump is just acting like he's oblivious to it. He's acting like it's not happening, or maybe it's not directed at him. Who knows what internally, what the psyche is doing at this point, because it's not doing anything rational. I mean, Trump is on the day, and anyway, I'll say that Trump is feigning obliviousness to this, to what's happening right in front of him, but his granddaughter's not. His granddaughter's clearly picked up that scores of thousands of people who've gathered to watch the pride of their city return to greatness direct all of their angst, all of their perceived powerlessness, all of their being the objects of targeted fascistic vindictive policies of the Trump administration, not only through ICE but through other corrupt things that are in the media in New York City, like things that involve the former mayor before Mamdani. Trump has a history in New York. You know, the what are they called, the five, the borough five or something like that, where is a very racially motivated. I mean, Trump took out a full page ad in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal calling for the re-prosecution of 5 black young people who were let go, who were found not guilty of some crime, and Trump reactivated the pursuit to prosecute and persecute these 5 young black men. So Trump deserved every bit of every single boo that came at him, every jeer, because he's been able to insulate himself, and those around him must flatter him, and he's gone flattered and unchallenged for far too long. These are people who I don't think they've ever been in a fight. I don't think they've ever got their tail whooped, like ever. Because if you approach life a little differently when you've been in these situations. And I'm tired. Every kid, like, you know, deals with bullies at the playground. But if you don't have the experience, you conduct yourself the way that Trump does, or Stephen Miller. I mean, the way that they operate with perceived impunity, like they can never face consequences. And we don't just focus on the midterms. We in the progressive world, we cannot just focus on elections. We have to focus on every single thing that we can do, talking to our families, getting each other ready, because America's reputation in the world is not what it used to be. Um, we've lost our perceived kind of exceptional place of prominence, where we're the arbiter of democracy and global security in the world. We're seen as the opposite of that now, and it's embarrassing. Like Pete Hegseth, right, our Secretary of Defense, Secretary of War, as he calls himself, on the 82nd commemoration, the 82nd memorial of D-Day, of the famed mythologized operation of not only Americans but Canadians, all of the Western Bloc's allies, right? What is now NATO, most of NATO. We stormed the beaches of Normandy, and to fight fascism, to fight Nazis, and to help liberate France, all of Europe, France, Spain, Britain, wherever Germany was invading and operating and bringing under their control, their fascistic control. America, that may have been the last just war that we ever engaged in. World War II. And so it's 82 years since then, and Pete Hegseth shows up and is invited by the world community, by the country of France, to give an address commemorating the D-Day operations of storming the beaches of Normandy, of fighting fascism, of collaborating with allies to defend, quote unquote, the free world. And Hegseth somehow jacks this up. He fumbles it, and he ends up being kicked out of France. He and his family in the United States of America symbolically were declared persona non grata. This was on June 6th. And he was kicked out of France. Why? Go find the audio. Go listen to what Pete Hegseth said. I mean, how hard do you have to try to fumble an opportunity just to simply honor American soldiers and the defense of the free world from fascism? But it happened. It happened, and he's either personally vindictive about what is happening in the global community's refusal to participate in the United States of America. Trump, Hegseth, and others blind support, and this goes for Congress, blind support for Israel's war against Iran. Most of the countries are not with that. They are not having that. Spain wouldn't let the United States fly over its airspace. Other NATO allies don't want to materially or even passively support what America is doing to Iran. However you want to view America, Israel, Iran, that whole what's going on over there, Hegseth goes on the world stage and embarrasses the United States of America. He says, he turns this solemn commemorative memorial into a vitriolic tirade against illegals, quote unquote illegals. And this is proof that different sects are working across national boundaries. But he said, sadly today, European beaches are now confronted with a different kind of invasion, an invasion of different ideologies. When will European capitals fight against this invasion? The same thing, the same vitriol and rhetoric that comes out of the Stephen Millers or the Kristi Noems or the Mark Wayne Mullins of the world, the same thing that is expressing itself through them. Now Hegseth is saying this on the world stage, trying to impugn the reputations of European countries, right? Admonishing them in their face at a time when he's supposed to be observing the sanctity and the solemnity of D-Day. He's saying things like, actually, we stand by our allies. We're supposed to stand by our allies, and we are supposed to be able to expect our allies to stand with us. And he's referring to, thankfully, Europe and NATO and all the rational, logical countries of the world are not supporting this disastrous, monstrous war against Iran. But we'll come back more on the updates of what's happening, what we're facing. Again, this is AM 950. This is Native American Patriot Talk, powered by Native Roots Radio. This is Chase Iron Eyes, and we'll come right back to you. If you want to learn more, if you want to dig in and support the good fight, we not only urge you to support Native Roots Radio and 950 AM Radio, the progressive voice of Minnesota, but please, you are invited to become a member of Lakota People's Law Project. This is an initiative of the Sacred Defense Fund, all Native led, all Native board organization, a vehicle to assert and defend those truths that we hold to be self-evident and those inalienable rights, all conceivable tribal and American constitutional sovereign rights. We are in the fight for the long haul. Sometimes we've had to get in good trouble. To join the fight in solidarity, go to action.lakotalaw.org, subscribe to our lists, and gain membership.
Hey, Cudahy to all my friends and relatives in four directions. This is Robert Pilot of Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. I'm here to ask you for your support. Finding honest Native-centered news is not easy, but with your support, we're able to provide accurate information about Standing Rock, Line 3, treaty violations, and COVID-19 in our Native communities. Please visit Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon and donate if you can. That's Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon. Pinigigi, and thank you for your support.
This is Chase Iron Eyes announcing a new show on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, powered by Native Roots Radio. The show is called Native American Patriot Talk Radio. What will we do on the show? We are going to explore and dive into the source of American constitutional sovereignty, the intersection of Native American and legal issues. Find us the first and third Tuesday of every month at 6 p.m. on AM 950. Okay,
Go ahead.
here we go. Ake lile taya wachian kapalo madakiapi kola iuha ichichab ani buju. I greet you all as friends in my language, the Lakota language, or the language of the Ocheti Shakomi, the Sioux Nation. And Ani and Buju is Anishinaabe or Ojibwa and Cree. And also shout out to the Ho Chunks, the many Ho Chunks who are in Minneapolis, St. Paul. There's no place like Minneapolis, St. Paul. And it's relevant because AM 950 is the progressive voice of Minnesota, but we're also, by extension, the heart and soul of the progressive movement in our entire country. And we have to keep the communications open. We have to keep seeking and watching out for each other's bat signals, our distress signals. The elections are about to come right upon us, and every state that has progressive people in it, some states are controlled, progressives are in power, and sometimes progressives aren't blue. I hope that most of the time they are, but I've run over that forced binary many times in our show. But I want to jump right back in because thank you to our listeners in AM 950 land, listening land. I was digging into the fact of the tide. The tide has shifted. There's been a seismic shift in how Trump is conducting himself, how his team of advisors are conducting themselves. You can tell things are different. Trump tries to show up to these very populist venues where he knows there's going to be tens, thousands, scores of thousands of Americans, and he thinks he's going to be celebrated. This is the frame of mind of a narcissist, of a pathology where they've never been challenged. They've only been insulated. They've only been flattered. They haven't been hit with critical inquiry from within their own team. Everybody used to walk on eggshells and crawl to be those who would show fealty to Donald Trump. Donald Trump used to be able to just announce that he's endorsing a certain MAGA candidate, and that MAGA candidate then would be able to overrun the traditional Republicans, right? Trump's endorsement used to be worth something. It used to shift entire elections. Trump's condemnation, if Trump is condemning you, that most certainly meant that the rabid, vitriolic MAGA base would be able to primary, I would say, a rational Republican, like R.I.P. John McCain. So there's been that split. There's this. It's not an identity crisis. That is the radical racist fringe. It's baked into who they are. These are the people who fought for slavery. The same people, just they changed forms. The KKK, Jim Crow laws, the Heritage Foundation, all other conservative think tanks, even the Federalist Society. Like, where are those guys? I remember, I thought you guys were the constitutionalists, the strict constitutionalists. I remember you guys from law school. I remember where you sat. I remember your little office, and I remember wondering who you were. What were you? What is the Federalist Society? And then you got to read the Federalist Papers. I mean, I haven't read all the Federalist Papers, but to get ready for Native American Patriot Talk way back in the beginning, February or January, February, whatever it was of this year, 2026, I isolated myself and I sat with the United States Constitution and other formative identity imparting laws, mythologies, the things that Americans tell themselves, the things we tell ourselves about who we are, about what we want to be as a very young fledgling colony, a country, right? The framers, we're about to celebrate or commemorate, however you want to look at that, memorialize 250 years of the United States of America. And I have two big things coming out that they're going to be here. Inshallah, Dakawaka Chimpi, Lord willing, they're going to be here on the 4th of July. They're going to be published. One of them will be published on Al Jazeera English. I encourage you to tap into that, tune into that. Just follow me on social media in order to stay locked in, or follow Lakota Law. That is an account that will publish some of these happenings. But I've got this July 4th of July short, a mini documentary, 20 some minutes. It's going to be extensive. That's long now. That's long for the attention spans that we're used to, right? In our algorithmic daily lives, our feeds. 20 some minutes, published on Al Jazeera English, hopefully going to air on July 4th. But it explores my journey through Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the fight with ICE, and the tragic murders and unjustified murders and killings for which nobody's been held accountable, for Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy. That's what brought me to Minneapolis. That's what put me in contact with Native Roots Radio, with Brother Robert Pilot, and that's what birthed Native American Patriot Talk. It was Robert who said, hey, you should lock in, and you should do something, you should give voice to this. So that's how we started. But anyway, things have shifted. Trump is no longer sitting in that driver's seat. He's no longer comfortable. You saw the latest interview he did. I forget what news channel that was, but he was in this fake farm setting because Again, he has to feign connection and feign like he represents the working class, the farmer, as he calls it. I don't have to be here. This is Trump. Trump saying this. I don't have to be here. Why am I here? I got elected. I'm here because I support the farmer, right? And just complete. He doesn't care if the mics are hot or not anymore. And he lost his cool, which he does all the time. But this time was more egregious, and he actually walked off the interview just because there was a smart, capable, critical journalists on the other side of that. And that's why AM 950, that's why the press, there's a reason why the framers put inside the inalienable rights rubric freedom of the press, because journalists, independent radio, progressive talk, progressive voices, the moment we pause, the moment that the power brokers and the purveyors of tyranny, fascism, and violence, the moment that they get inside our head, inside our mainframe, and cause us to pause in our sacred duty to defend this republic against all enemies, foreign and domestic, the moment they get us to pause and say that maybe we shouldn't criticize them, maybe we're going to suffer ratings decreases, maybe we're going to be doxxed by the MAGA movement, the way that Jolly Ginger is doxxed, by the way that Will Kelly, the woke farmer, is doxxed, Ian Austin, weapons of mass production. I follow these brothers they're all veterans. They're all American United States military service and or American military combat veterans. And they all carry scars, but they're going to where the fight's at, like a patriot should. They're going to where they see fascist forces, tyrannical forces intruding upon the sanctity and the integrity of American constitutional life. That's what patriots do. That's why they're at the Delaney Detention Center, where, I mean, they're being brutalized. It's just like Minneapolis, St. Paul, all over again. And that's how it is everywhere. There, the reality of corporate tyranny or corporate fascism, the oligarchy, unchecked greed, unbridled extractive tyranny, the unbridled war machine that is fueled by all of the war manufacturers. If you've been alive long enough to see the BS, like I have, every single war, that's why I say World War II is probably the last justified conflict. I mean, cost us tens of thousands of souls, scores and scores of thousands of American families gave the supreme sacrifice. But ever since then, if you just pay attention, it's the same thing every single time. It's either a false flag operation, or they just propagandize and concoct this narrative that we've got to be fighting usually Muslims. You know, there's always some justification that we, the United States, or some other country, sometimes it was Britain, sometimes it's other NATO countries, but now it's Israel. We're always sold some fake reason why we got to be bombing and committing mass murder, why we got to be bombing schools and hospitals. And it's just there's no truth, there's no rhyme or reason to any of it anymore. It's just propaganda, false reasons. And you know, even the prospect of the draft is just, it's not cutting it. There's a reason why Trump hasn't invaded Iran yet, because they know it's going to fall. Nobody's going to support that. Nobody is going to support that war. That is not something that we're going to live with, right? Those of you who were around during the anti-war movements of the Vietnam era, which came on the heels of the civil rights movement and the plant medicine explosion, or the psychedelic movement, the beginning of what is referred to in pop culture as hippies. However you want to view that, and that's a strange world, especially when it comes to native people. But that is an enhancement of consciousness, which demanded that people who become unified with the sacred universe are no longer willing to put up with the war manufacturers telling us, hey, this is why your sons and daughters, this is why we got to be able to sacrifice them at the altar of profit. We're going to send them over to somewhere 3,000 miles away to die for your freedoms here. You're gonna have to give your son and your daughter up for the oligarchic cause of profiteering. We're not doing that anymore. Like, I don't know. I mean, you have to be willing to draw a line, and that's where American patriotism, that is where those of us who like to think that we are patriots, we have to recognize where the core principles, those inalienable rights, the truths that we hold to be self-evident, when those are confronted and diminished, when those tyrannical or fascistic forces seek to diminish those rights, that's in our hands. We can't sit around and wait for Congress or the courts, the Supreme Court. Look at what they're doing. They're buckling. It's clear that our framers, as good as they were creatures of their time, you know, they 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 built something, they designed something, but they didn't they didn't contemplate all of us. They didn't contemplate women as like human beings, or as not they didn't contemplate women as not being property, right? Not having autonomy. Now that women are not property, and now that like women can open their own bank accounts, um, you know, the whole entire female aspect of our species should be at least as motivated as anybody, as those who were also considered slaves, those who were also just considered chattel property, those for whom the height of their humanity was 3/5 of a human being at one time, those who suffered the indignities of the slave trade and the Jim Crow era, and redlining, native people who were not even considered human beings at all. We should have our eye on the ball. We should be looking directly at the state of affairs, because it's been a long, hard struggle and a sacrifice for us to achieve, and to be able to inhere in ourselves, to be able to be born into the same rights, privileges, and immunities that were once only claimed by European males in our country. The framers didn't contemplate, the expansion, the diverse expansion of our constituency, of the American demographic. But we got there. It's been a long and bloody road, but we're here. And if you perceive ICE to be intruding upon our rights to peaceably assemble, or how about just the humane rights to be free from private prisons that are serving rotten food, where people are dying in their care. And then you have people like Mark Wayne Mullen going on camera and saying that it's because these certain ethnic people, these certain ethnicities didn't want to eat. They didn't want to eat because we couldn't provide their certain ethnic food. Making a complete mockery. I mean, it's profit driven. And I've had dreams about this for a long time, of private prison camps, concentration camps. And who knows how that really works. Communications, inspirations from the cause, from divine consciousness. But we should be, we pay attention to that. We don't just put that to the side and call it, you know we don't mock it in any way. And so I want to recognize what's happening at the Delaney concentration camp out there, and I want to encourage those of you who are standing, those of you who have been subjected to probably private military or corporate sponsored state violence out there. Those of you who are holding the line for the freedom of the press, our rights to peaceably assemble, free speech, our rights to be free from illegal searches and seizures. I try to say this almost every single episode. We are going to lose those rights that we don't exercise, and that the other side, the fascists and the tyrannical maniacs, they have to know that we're willing to defend those rights to the greatest extent imaginable. As like the tree of liberty from time to time must be nourished with the blood of tyrants and patriots alike. Now, Trump is no longer in the same position that he thought he was in, or that he used to enjoy. And I just want to run through some examples. They tried to pass through this $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund, as it's called. And I believe that they mean that they don't want a situation where the United States government can charge Trump supporters or MAGA supporters, because the whole point of this bill is to compensate, people who were targeted by the United States government, because those same people tried to instigate a violent and bloody insurrection, January 6, 2021. Trump is doing his best to pardon, to not only fill all of 200 and some judgeships with justices that are loyal to him, but also, I mean, that's what I mean. It's happening right now. It's an attempted fascist takeover right now. It's already happening. It's not on its way. It's not. We're in the middle of it, and each of us has a responsibility and an ability to pursue our own destiny, to choose how and under what conditions we live our lives in relation to the social contract theory, the consent of the governed. You just have to pay attention to what the enormity of what is happening, the breadth of what is happening, which was outlined by gents like Steve Bannon. I mean, it's like Steve Bannon is like the walking undead, or the living dead, or whatever. He reminds me of Nosferatu. I don't know how he's still kicking, but that's how I know that it's a global, or at least a Western Bloc white supremacist movement that is happening in Europe and here, and it's coordinated. It's a coordinated effort. But there's even Republicans now who are not afraid to, quote unquote, cross the aisle. And they've done that in relation to this 1.8 billion weaponization fund and the ballroom. How many assassination attempts has Trump faked? Like, when nobody even takes those seriously anymore. The first one, with the bloody ear, and then people wearing bandages on their ear. Another one at Mar-a-Lago, and then most recent one at I believe is a hotel somewhere. But the pretense of it, the goal of it, is to show that Trump needs a ballroom, $1 billion ballroom. For what? I don't know. What's the real purpose of that? But what I'm trying to point out is that Republicans don't. They're not even the Republicans aren't playing that anymore. They're not. They've had enough. I mean, these fake ceasefires, and now again, Iran is bombing Israel. Israel's bombing Lebanon. Things are gas prices are soaring through the roof. But the House of Representatives, I want to give a shout out to the House of Representatives because they recently passed a resolution. They took action to force Trump to either withdraw American forces in and around Iran, or the buildup to Iran, which Trump is always on camera saying is just a military exercise. It's not a war. But of course, we covered in this show the War Powers Act. But Congress is finally now saying, look, you either get our servicemen and women out of there, out of your shoddy, disastrous, whatever this is in Iran, get them out of there, or you have to seek congressional approval for this war. So shout out to the House of Representatives. Shout out to every single judge who's holding the line. There's another lawsuit about the UFC on the White House lawn being able to be privately monetized by Paramount or whatever corporation is in the mix right now. There's so much to cover, so much to cover, but we've reached what we wanted to cover here today, which is that a seismic shift has already happened. A shift in consciousness has already happened against tyranny and fascism. And it just so happened Trump is trying to proliferate those and execute those ideologies against American people, American families. But over our dead bodies, will we allow fascists and tyrannical maniacs to bring us under their thumb? Give me liberty or give me death, as Patrick Henry would say. So thank you for tuning in. This is AM 950 Native American Patriot Talk, powered by Native Roots Radio, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I thank you for indulging. I thank you for listening. We'll see you again in 2 weeks, the first and third Tuesday of each month. Thank you so much.